Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 263 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, what is going on?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing very well.
Yeah?
Enjoying this 90-degree weather that we're having out of the blue all of a sudden. It's awesome.
I'm pulled up here. You're out in your shorty shorts and your half top.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Skating around like Officer Jim Dangle on Reno 911. But sometimes that's just the way I like to roll.
You were definitely rolling.
Let's go ahead and give our Patreon shout outs. We had Oliver Elliott jump out at our highest level.
What's going on, Elliot?
Jessica Walton.
Hey, Walton.
Harley Angel jumped out higher than our highest level.
Well, thank you, Angel.
Also, I think sent me a bunch of pictures of this huge piece of equipment that she operates and one of her and her Harley.
Well, that's cool.
So, yeah, I enjoyed the pictures.
Yeah.
We had Hannah Turner.
What's going on, Hannah?
Brandy Warden jumped out at our highest level.
Hey, Warden.
Daniel Peters.
Hey, Daniel.
Susan Mum.
Well, thanks, Mom.
Heather Talent jumped out at our highest level.
Thanks so much, Heather.
Haley.
Hey, what's going on, Haley?
Lisa Folkard.
There's Lisa.
All Hallows.
Well, thank you all.
Carol Calloway.
What's up, Calloway?
Jennifer Krovich.
Hey, Krovich.
Jenna Hall.
Hey, thanks, Jenna.
Vanessa Spencer.
Hey, Vanessa.
And Jason Valencourt.
Well, appreciate that, Valencourt.
Yeah, we appreciate all the new support. And then if we go back into the vault, Gibbs, this week we selected Christy Adcock.
Hey, thanks, Christy.
So we appreciate that long-term support as well. On PayPal, we had Constant Newbold.
Appreciate that, Newbold.
A Lab in the Air.
What's up, Lab?
And Richard Lawrence.
Hey, Lawrence.
So appreciate everyone. Gibbs, we have a new TCAT out right now. We're going back to the early 1900s to talk about Harry Thaw, who fatally shot renowned architect Stanford White on a rooftop in New York City. The trial that followed was deemed the trial of the century. And there were a whole bunch of scandals that came out. I just thought it was a really interesting case with a love triangle and some strange facets.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, man. It was definitely, as you say, scandalous.
And especially for 1906, 1907.
Yeah.
Very scandalous.
I think you're find some shocking tidbits in there.
All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I'm ready.
We are talking about the Jamison family disappearance. In October 2009, the Jamison family left home to look at a property for sale in a remote area of Red Oak, Oklahoma. They were never seen alive again. Their bodies were not found until 4 years later, and the medical examiner couldn't determine the cause of death for any of the three family members. Theories on what happened to the Jamisons range from murder, suicide, starvation, drug-related activity to a murder committed by a cult. So we're going to have a lot of theories to explore.
We're all over the board.
The Jamison family consisted of 44-year-old Bobby, 40-year-old Sherrilyn, and 6-year-old Madyson. Bobby and Sherrilyn met in the summer of 2002. Sherrilyn knew right away that she was interested in dating Bobby. Bobby was described as a good man who didn't want to do wrong to anyone. Sherrilyn was a passionate person who was always firm in her beliefs. The pair married in July 2004, and Madyson was born later that summer. Starlet Jamison, Bobby's mother, told the show Disappeared, "Madyson was my son's best gift in his whole life." And Gibbs, that's something that I completely understand. I remember that feeling when my first daughter was born. I had the exact same feeling when my second daughter was born, and I still feel the same way about them today.
Hey, I'm right there with you with both of my kids.
The family were originally from Oklahoma City, but moved to a lakefront home in Eufaula, Oklahoma. Bobby and Sherrilyn found a 40-acre parcel of land in a remote area of Red Oak, Oklahoma, situated near an abandoned oil well. They found the property online, and they decided that they wanted to take a look at it and possibly make an offer.
40 acres.
That's quite a big piece of land.
Yeah, for some people, that's a dream property.
Yeah, I would say for some it is. Now, I think for many, it would depend on where that 40-acre parcel is, but...
You're right. Location.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going back to the old 40 acres and a mule type thing. which for some I believe is absolutely true.
Picturing Tom Cruise riding the horse with Nicole Kidman. You know that movie?
Far away or far away or far and away?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, got to get that, pull that flag out of the ground, make that my property.
I got you. So they want to see this parcel. Maybe they're going to make an offer. Bobby and Sherrilyn wanted to move a shipping container onto the land and live there. They wanted to buy the land as a fresh start and eventually build a home and possibly a business on the property. They were excited to join the small community of people who lived off the land. The decision to move may have been kind of a spur of the moment thing. Sherrilyn's older son, Colton, from a previous relationship, saw her just 2 weeks before they disappeared and said that she didn't mention these plans to him.
Which is strange, right? You would think that, hey, I'm kind of looking at maybe moving out to this 40 acres, putting on this shipping container, living out of that for a little bit before we build a home. What do you think?
Yeah, I think if I was planning something like that and I was talking to my mom or my dad, I'd probably mention it.
Yeah.
Now, are they saying that it was so spur of the moment that it came within the 2 weeks, after the period of time that she talked to Colton? Maybe.
I mean, I've definitely woken up with the thought of changing the place I lived and, kind of a spur of the moment, but I would never just pull the trigger without rethinking everything and having some conversations with people close to me before I do something like that.
Oh, I've had some very strange thoughts after waking up in the morning that I don't act on or that I rethink and decide, no, that's a bad idea. You don't need to do that. On October 7th, 2009, the Jamisons loaded up their truck and drove 30 miles to Panola Mountain, Oklahoma, but they got lost in the mountains. So Bobby asked someone that he saw for directions. He told the person they thought about building a home in a remote mountain area. Bobby got directions to the 40-acre plot of land and decided to come back the next day to find it. The Jamisons were last seen on October 8th, 2009, near Red Oak, Oklahoma. They left home that morning to visit the land that they were looking to purchase. Former Latimer County Sheriff Israel Beauchamp told the Associated Press that a landowner saw them in the area. So from that, Gibbs, I take it that they made it there.
Right.
On October 16th, a local hunter discovered the Jamisons' abandoned truck near a remote well pad near the 40-acre plot. So obviously that means they made it there as well. The truck was parked on a dirt road at the top of the mountain. The hunter peeked inside and saw a small dog without food and water. He called the sheriff's office, who quickly responded and saved the dog. The small dog belonged to Madyson. It was said, Gibbs, in, various reports that this dog was barely alive. And you and I have said it countless times. Yeah, people worry about the welfare of other human beings. There's no doubt that they do.
Sure.
But people definitely also very much so care about the welfare of animals.
We love our doggies.
We do. So not everything's going to be great in this story. We know that this is a good part of the story, that they were able to rescue the dog. The dog survived. Now, the truck was locked and it contained a number of personal items. Besides the dog, Bobby's wallet, Sherrilyn's purse, a cell phone with GPS, and an envelope with $32,000 was found inside.
It's a lot of money to have floating around inside your truck.
That's a lot of cash. I don't know if anybody's ever, held $32,000. Now, okay, if you happen to have $1,000 bills, which you don't see very often, it's 32 bills, but most people don't. Depending on the denominations, 32,000, it's quite a bit.
That's a huge amount. I don't even know if they make $30,000 bills anymore.
I don't know if they do either, but I've seen them.
Yeah.
I've never owned one or possessed one. It was said that the cash was stuffed in a bank bag under the driver's seat. Upon finding the cash, sheriff's deputies immediately taped off the area surrounding the truck to preserve a potential crime scene. And I think that's very smart, because if you just look at the clues that you're seeing, upon arriving, the dog left inside, locked up, no food and water. That's a bad sign.
That is a bad sign.
Dog owners don't do that.
No.
Voluntarily, on purpose. Then you find a male's wallet, a female's purse,
And this huge amount of cash.
and a cell phone.
And a cell phone.
These are all things that people just don't leave behind. The police couldn't locate a .22 pistol that belonged to Sherrilyn. It was said that she normally kept it in the truck, but police didn't find it. Deputies searched the immediate area. They called out the family's names, but they didn't get a response. There were no signs of foul play. It looked, I think, to authorities as though the family was planning on coming back to the truck.
I think the only issue with that is, like you said, a dog owner probably wouldn't leave their dog locked inside the truck.
Not for any length of time.
Right.
Any extended, but if you were just going to get out and look at something for a few minutes, okay, I could see maybe that being plausible.
Right.
5 minutes or 10 minutes or something like that. You're not going very far. You're not intending to go very far. I think the sheriff thought that the family got lost because they weren't at the location marked on the map that was found inside the truck. Investigators later learned that the truck's location was at a second option the family was looking at for land to possibly buy. So this wasn't the 40 acres, the first option that we talked about initially. The family had also left their jackets in the truck. And I think that was concerning to police because the weather was getting colder at night.
And we know it's been 8 days since they traveled up the mountain to look at the property.
Which is concerning.
It is.
You think about 2 adults, but then you think about a very young child. All 3 of them, no jackets, trying to make it through these cold nights. Okay, I could see why the police were worried. Cell phone GPS data showed that the family didn't spend most of their time in the truck's location. GPS coordinates led up a nearby hill. They found Madyson's footprints and other footprints leading up to a rock. They discovered that the Jamisons spent about 15 or 20 minutes up the hill from the truck. Police found a picture on the cell phone of Madyson on a small bluff, a couple of 100 yards from the rock. After taking the picture, the Jamisons went back to the truck and started to leave, but something stopped them. So pretty interesting that, this case is newer. You've got a cell phone. You've got the GPS technology that kind of allows the authorities to track their movements.
It's like little footprints showing you where you went, how you came back, and how long you were in different locations.
But then the cell phone ends up back in the truck along with everything else. So, I get why they would say, okay, they made it back to the truck and it looks as though they were getting ready to leave when something happened. On October 17th, 300 volunteers and law enforcement began searching for the family. Heavy rain hit the area during the week that they were missing. Sheriff Beauchamp didn't think the creek was strong enough to sweep away the bodies of the adults. The sheriff's department utilized aerial drones. They had some fixed wing aircraft with that heat imaging type of technology that I think is amazing. Gibbs, you see it sometimes when they're looking for fugitives and they can see that the fugitive is crouched down in like some brush.
Oh, yeah.
Because the thermal imaging or, however it works.
Like infrared or something like that.
Yeah. Sometimes hiding underneath a truck like the heat signature shows. They also had search dogs, horse teams, and ATVs. Scent dogs were very interested in the truck and the hill area. They also alerted investigators by a nearby water tank. So investigators drained and examined the tank, but they didn't find anything. And my thought, Gibbs, is that they had to be very concerned that they were going to drain this tank and find 3 bodies.
Yeah, when you have scent dogs hitting on something like that, the odds are something's going to be found. But in this case, nothing.
According to the Indian Journal, this is a rural area with few residents and many oil field locations. The terrain is a rugged, mountainous region with thick trees, vegetation, and wildlife. There are hunting cabins, but few year-round residents in the area. When the police spoke to neighbors, they said they didn't report the truck sooner because they thought it belonged to a work crew for one of the oil companies.
Probably never imagined that was somebody looking at surveying a home site and wanting to live out there, knowing how rugged the conditions were.
Well, I think unless you saw 2 adults and a child earlier with the truck, would you really be that suspicious about a truck? No, probably not.
No.
I could see why people would think that's some workers or, whatever.
Checking on an old oil field.
Yeah, and not really thinking this is a family who's gone missing. That's not going to be your first thought. The Jamisons weren't reported missing by their family because they were very private people. It was reported that they often went days without speaking to anyone, and they had a habit of just leaving town without telling their family. Sherrilyn would sometimes go a year or more without speaking to her best friend.
Man, there's some people that actually can do that.
Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes I get in that spot. Now, I'm not saying I go a year without talking to people, but sometimes I just get in like a groove of writing and researching and putting out the podcast. I don't always think to pick up the phone and touch base with friends. I talk to my parents and all that every week, but there are times when quite a bit of time passes and I forget to call my friends and just touch base.
Yeah. You mean to, but you get busy.
Yeah, you just get busy. Now, I do think a year is a very long time to go without talking to your best friend. The other thing that was in the reporting was that the Jamisons had just pulled Madyson out of school to begin homeschooling. So that's another factor in this case, right? The local elementary school didn't know she was missing because she wasn't going there.
Well, it makes sense why they pulled her out, too, if they're going to be looking at potentially living on 40 acres up in some rugged mountain area.
She wasn't going to go to school there anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I do think it's an interesting point because, in a lot of cases involving children, depending on what time of the day they go missing, sometimes the school is the first one to know or report it. Investigators were confused about the dog that was left behind in the truck. It was well known to people that knew the family that Madyson loved her dog. And Bobby and Sherrilyn did as well. Like we said before, Gibbs, they wouldn't have just left it voluntarily.
No. Anybody that loves their doggy is not going to leave it behind.
So I think when you look at that fact alone, that indicates that something happened that made them leave the truck very quickly, and there was something that prevented them from returning. I don't know what other conclusion you can make. They're going to come back for the wallet, purse, money, cell phone, and especially the dog.
Yeah. Those are just items you typically would not leave behind.
And the only reason why they wouldn't is that someone else prevented them from doing so. True Crime All the Time Unsolved is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Let's face it, folks. Sometimes multitasking can be overwhelming. Like when your favorite podcast is playing and the person next to you is talking and your car fan is blasting, all while you're trying to find the perfect parking spot. But then again, sometimes multitasking is easy, like quoting with Progressive Insurance. They do the hard work of comparing rates so you can find a great rate that works for you, even if it's not with them. Give their nifty comparison tool a try, and you might just find find getting the rate and coverage you deserve is easy. All you need to do is visit Progressive's website to get a quote with all the coverages you want, like comprehensive and collision coverage or personal injury protection. Then you'll see Progressive's direct rate, and their tool will provide options from other companies, all lined up and ready to compare. So it's simple to choose the rate and coverages you like. Press play on comparing auto rates. Quote at Progressive.com to join the over 27 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy. Does your lawn have weeds, bare patches, or pet spots? I know mine did. Sunday can help you solve all those problems and more the easy way. They've got everything you need, from fertilizer to seeds to weed control, and it's all delivered right to your door. This year, I'm using Sunday. Your yard is your personal oasis. It deserves to be the best. Sunday helps you grow a beautiful lawn, control pests, and fight weeds without all the toxic stuff. Sunday's custom lawn care is effective and super easy. Just go to getsunday.com, put in your address, and their lawn analysis tool does the rest. They use soil and climate data to create a personal nutrient plan delivered to your door right when you need it. Sunday's lawn care products are made with your family in mind. That's why they use ingredients you can feel good about, like seaweed, iron, and molasses. And the best part is, it really works. And Sunday is offering our listeners 20% off. Full season plans start at just $129, and you can get 20% off when you visit getsunday.com/unsolved at checkout. That's 20% off your custom plan at getsunday.com/unsolved. The Sheriff's Department attempted a final search on October 23rd, but we mentioned it, right? This was rough terrain. The roads were covered in mud. It made it very difficult for trucks, trailers, and even horses to navigate the roads without sliding. It was also the start of deer season, which meant it would be dangerous to go in the woods with a lot of hunters around the area. The rain made scent tracking impossible, but a large group of people decided they would search the land from sunrise to sunset.
So you still had your diehard people that said, you know what, it's important. There's some missing people. We're still going to do it. We're going to take that risk.
Yeah, and we see that in these cases, and it's always heartwarming. You know, a lot of times these are people that don't even know individuals who are missing.
Right.
They just feel it in their heart as though they need to help. Yeah. Because I think a lot of people say, well, if this were me, I would want everyone to come out and help find me. So I'm going to jump in and help.
Yeah.
And especially when you have a small child involved.
I think the numbers show up even greater.
I do too. On October 31st, the sheriff's office announced they were going to scale back the search efforts, but would continue the search just on a smaller scale. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children generated 3 posters for the family. But Gibbs, years passed without any leads in the case. Again, something that you see in many cases where at some point in time, the search efforts get scaled back. They just can't continue at that same level for an indeterminate amount of time.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's just the resources are limited at one point, right? You can only do so much for so long.
4 years passed. And on November 16, 2013, a man, his wife, and their daughter were out deer hunting in Red Oak when they discovered the skeletal remains of 2 adults and 1 child. The remains were found 9 miles south of Kinta, Oklahoma, in a mountainous location due to the rugged terrain. Investigators couldn't get there until the next day. So, I mean, it really tells you what kind of geography we're dealing with here.
Right.
The Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation reported that the remains were located 2.7 miles northwest of the pickup truck, and they weren't buried. They were spread out on top of the ground. The authorities found bits of clothing, bones, and bone fragments in the area around the bodies. And my first thought, Gibbs, was it's not that far away, 2.7 miles. But when you think about, 2.7 or 3 miles in a circle.
Radius,
that becomes a much bigger area.
It sure does. And you just wonder how close did
they come
to that area.
Yeah. That was one of my thoughts because, they're searching. We said there was a lot of people that came out and helped. And you think after the fact, after the remains are found, probably a lot of people felt like, oh, if we'd have just done this, or if we'd have just gone a little bit farther, we would have found them, much, much sooner. According to foxnews.com, the OSBI issued a statement. Law enforcement authorities do not have any information to indicate these human remains are that of the Jamison family. However, since the remains were found about 2.7 aerial miles northwest of where Bobby Jamison's pickup truck was found in 2009, authorities are looking into the possibility of the remains belonging to the Jamison family. And I get that. They can't come out and definitively say, but you have 2 adults, 1 child, not that far from, where the pickup truck was.
Right.
I think the logical conclusion is that this is probably them, but authorities can't come out and say that until they
have some evidence.
Yeah, until they get the evidence that proves that it is the Jamisons. Officials reported that nothing was found with the remains to identify the bodies. And that makes sense. We mentioned it, right? Wallet, purse, everything was kind of left in the truck. However, Sherrilyn's mother, Connie Cocaton, said that an agent told her that they found a child's shoe nearby. The office of the chief medical examiner announced that they would use anthropological and forensic methods to identify the bodies. Spokeswoman Amy Elliott told FoxNews.com, depending on the features of these remains and their state of preservation, an identification can take anywhere from days to years.
Isn't it amazing it could take that long? I mean, it could be as quick as days, but maybe it might take years.
Well, and I think because we're talking about less than 10 years ago, you kind of think technology was at the point where the identification could be made much quicker, but there's a lot of factors that go into it. Gary Perkinson, assistant special agent in charge for the OSBI, told the Daily Oklahoman that in his opinion, it would have been easy to miss the bodies in the fall of 2009 due to heavy tree cover and falling leaves obscuring the bodies. Tim Graham, the hunter who found the remains, spoke with the McIntosh County Democrat in 2014. He said it was in a wooded area, but by golly, a trail went right to it. It was a pretty good path. Deer and hogs run through there. We had no problems walking straight to it. The skeletons were on top of the ground, but sunk into the soil. They were face down. He saw 3 skulls, 1 big, 1 smaller, and 1 very small. The large skull had a hole on the top of the head. Law enforcement initially told him they thought the hole was from a coyote, but he was insistent that that wasn't possible.
So a little conflict of information.
Yeah, and I want to go back to what this guy was saying. I kind of took it from his words that these bodies shouldn't have been that hard to find.
Right.
Like I almost felt like he was disagreeing with what the guy had said from the OSBI, but I'm also picturing, coming up upon this scene in my mind. 3 skulls, 1 big, 1 smaller, and 1 very small. Okay. That's an image that's haunting me right now. If I saw it in person, I think it would haunt me for a long time.
If you remember, he found those skulls remains with his wife and his daughter.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Can't forget about that. So 3 individuals who, one pretty, I don't know how young she was, but pretty scarring, I would think. Yeah. In early July 2014, the Oklahoma State Medical Examiner's Office positively identified the remains as the Jamison family.
So nearly 7 months later.
Did take a while. Not years, but 7 months, a long time. The medical examiner could not determine a cause of death for any of the 3. The bodies had no soft tissue remaining, and animals had gotten to them. So that would make it tougher, right, to determine a cause of death. Jack Jamison, Bobby's uncle, told CBS, it brings closure, not knowing, especially the little girl. She did nothing to cause something like that. It brings closure. That's about all I can say. It's sad. It's about what we expected.
Yeah, I get it. They're not happy about having the closure, but they have closure.
But do they? They don't know what happened.
Sort of closure, right?
Yeah, I was watching one of the true crime docs the other day. I can't remember which one it was, but a survivor said on the documentary, there is no such thing as closure. There's just moving forward. I thought that was a very interesting statement, and it made a lot of sense to me because closure is such a strange word. You hear it used a lot.
Yeah, but that makes sense, right?
It does, because are things ever really over? And to me, I would think no. If you lose a loved one, okay, just because they find out who did it, does that mean you're not still grieving? No. So is it really closure? And maybe people use that term differently. It means different things to them. But I thought that was interesting. But here I was surprised to hear the word closure because they're found, but we have no idea what happened to them.
Yeah. How did they die?
And if they were killed, who did it? The police wondered if the family had gotten lost and died of exposure, but I think to them this seemed unlikely. The truck was parked facing downhill, as if the family was leaving, but got stopped by someone or something. They also had working GPS at the time of their deaths. Their bodies were found side by side. If they died of exposure, I think to law enforcement, it was doubtful that they would have died in the exact position in which they were found.
Unlikely that they all laid in the same position and just died like that.
According to the Daily Mail, Colton, Sherrilyn's son, said, that just doesn't make any sense. Bobby grew up in the country. He knew nature and what he was doing out there. No way would he have got them lost like that. Bobby had severe chronic pain. So could he have walked almost 3 miles in rugged terrain with medical issues? His mother said no way. She said when you're going round and about and up and down, it's nearer to 7 miles.
Yeah, I get that, right? The 3 miles, just walking straight out flat is one thing. But to traverse up and down a mountain range, that's a whole nother ballpark.
It is, and we also clarified, I think, 2.7 aerial miles. So that's like flying in a straight line.
Right.
Well, in rugged terrain, you're not probably able to walk in a straight line. But the up and down is probably even the bigger part. She said, no way could they have made it over that ground, especially with Bobby's back. Bobby would get in pain walking around the house, let alone covering that kind of ground. Sherrilyn's mother questioned, why were they lying face down if that happened, if they died of exposure, right? All together like that. Also, why would they leave the dog in the truck? She said Madyson loved that dog. She didn't go anywhere without it, and she wouldn't have just left her in the truck.
Yeah, you think they probably would have at least rolled the window down, open the door, let the dog run with them, or stay there if they wanted to, but not lock it in the truck where it couldn't get out.
Well, if they were going on a little bitty hike, why not take the dog with them?
Exactly.
So, I think to me and to most people listening, these facts or these things that are known don't really align with deciding to walk. They got lost and they died of exposure. The Jamison family's disappearance made national news. And, this was obviously during the time of the internet. Theories started to spread pretty quickly, ranging from the Jamisons faking their deaths, being in witness protection, being murdered, and even group suicide. There's even a theory online that Bobby's father murdered the Jamisons. Bobby Dean Jamison and his son were estranged when the family went missing. Bobby Dean owned a gas station in Oklahoma City. He and Bobby worked there together for many years. Bobby was supposed to get half the earnings when his father sold the business, but was never paid. Okay, that can lead to a fallout.
Yeah, definitely can lead to some family problems.
In May 2009, Bobby Dale Jamison filed a civil suit against both of his parents, Bobby Dean and starlet Jean, for more than $10,000 for the money he was entitled to when his father sold the gas station. Bobby also sued for property he was owed and 2 vehicles for his daughter. According to the Oklahoman, his attorneys wrote Bobby Dean Jamison enticed Bobby Jamison to work for free at a gas station in Oklahoma City for numerous years without any compensation, but with the understanding that the station would be half his when he was older.
I think probably there's some parents that promise their kids that a lot back in the day, right? Hey, I need you to help us do this, and, we'll take care of you later.
Well, this is going to be all yours someday.
That's right.
Well, someday never comes.
Right.
Because the business fails, it gets sold, or whatever. Now, they're not doing that with any malice.
Right.
They're intending for the business to be around and for, it to be kind of a legacy to be handed down to their kids, but it doesn't happen this way. I think the situation we're talking about here sounds to be quite different.
Exactly.
But Bobby also filed for a protective order in May 2009. In the petition, he said that his father threatened to kill him and his family in November 2008 and again in late April 2009.
Well, there's a father's love.
Well, we said it could cause some fallout. This is way beyond fallout. He described his father as a very dangerous man who thinks he is above the law, a.k.a. Mike Gibby Gibson.
The man above the law.
Very dangerous. Thinks he's above the law.
What's that movie with the guy carrying the stick, walking tall?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wait, he was the law.
He was the law. He wasn't above the law. He was the law. But Bobby also put in the petition that he believed his father was involved with prostitutes, gangs, and meth. He wrote that his father hit me with his vehicle on November 1st, 2008. My entire family is severely scared for their lives. I am in fear at all times. On May 18th, 2009, the protective order was dismissed after a judge heard testimony from everyone involved.
But even with it being dismissed, all that was put out there and said, so that there had to be a big riff in the family.
Yeah, whether any of it was true, some of it was true, none of it was true. The mere fact that it was written down, it was said in a court.
Yeah.
People are going to be upset. But I do think investigators consider this theory unlikely. I mean, for one thing, Bobby Dean was in poor health. He died in December of 2009. Jack Jamison, Bobby's uncle, told the Daily Oklahoman that he does not believe his brother was involved. He said he was either in a hospital or in a rest home. I just don't think he was involved. He was disturbed at the time, but I'm pretty sure he was not capable of being involved in that.
But if he was, he had to plan it like, I'm going to make myself look like I'm not able to do anything, and then I'm going to roll out of this hospital bed, take care of some business, come back, and act like I'm never left.
Yeah.
Unlikely, right?
But listen to what his brother said. He doesn't think he did it, but he does say that he was disturbed at the time. Now, you can take the word disturbed to mean a number of different things. I take it as having mental health issues.
Yeah.
But maybe that's not what he meant. I don't know. Gibbs, when I squirrel away down to the basement, most of the time my family, they just believe that I'm researching, writing for the podcast. Well, sometimes I'm playing Best Fiends and they don't even know. You've heard me say it, but I love Best Fiends. I just passed level 320, and it's a game that I never get tired of. It's a great relaxer, a pick-me-up when I need a little me time. Best Fiends is a free-to-download mobile puzzle game with thousands of exciting levels for new adventures and challenges every time you play. There are dozens of unique fiends to collect, so you can customize your team of fiends to defeat the menacing slugs. They have offline play, so you'll never be stranded without fun, even if you lose your internet connection. And they have brand new events and challenges that pop up all year round. So you always have a chance to earn exclusive in-game items, characters, and rewards. Download your new favorite getaway, Best Fiends, for free today on the App Store or Google Play. You'll even get $5 worth of in-game rewards when you reach level 5. That's friends without the R, Best Fiends. Now, folks, most people know Paul Holes as the gifted cold case detective who helped catch the Golden State Killer. But until now, no one has known the man behind it all. In his new book, Unmasked, My Life Solving America's Cold Cases, Paul Holes takes us behind the scenes of catching elusive, infamous criminals, including Lacey Peterson's murder, J.C. Dugard's kidnapper, and of course, the Golden State Killer. Behind it all, Unmasked gives us an inside look at what makes Holes tick, the drive to find closure for victims and their loved ones, and the inability to walk away from a challenge, even at the expense of his own happiness. For the first time, we have Paul Holes' inside story of catching killers and how he deals with the darkness they leave in their wake. Unmasked is available now everywhere books are sold. The FBI questioned Jack Jamison because he was named executor of Bobby Dean's will on October 27, 2008. Madyson was the sole beneficiary of her grandfather's estate. It basically cut out Bobby. It also cut out his ex-wife, Starlet Jamison. Starlet and Bobby Dean divorced in the months before his death in December 2009. It was said in the research Gibbs that Bobby Dean had been abusive towards her and she feared for her safety. So, I mean, I think if you kind of take what a lot of these people are saying, it doesn't mean that Bobby Dean had a hand in what happened to the Jamison family, but it does kind of point to him being a fairly dangerous individual.
Yeah, I think you at least can come away with that conclusion.
A second theory investigators considered is the possibility of a murder-suicide. So obviously investigators processed the items they found in the truck. They found an 11-page hate letter from Sherrilyn to Bobby inside the truck. She wrote that Bobby wanted to be a loner and didn't want a family. This letter was just filled with hatred towards Bobby. The police learned that in recent months, their marriage had been troubled. They were considering divorce. They wanted to sell their house and move away for a fresh start for their marriage. The police also found a letter in the home discussing death. Former Sheriff Beauchamp said they were certainly a family obsessed with death. He said tensions between Bobby and Sherrilyn had been building for years. So there's a lot going on in the Jamison family and then also with the extended family.
Oh, yeah.
In 2003, Bobby was involved in a serious car accident. He was driving his truck and he was coming around a blind curve. A woman hit him on one side and another woman hit him from the other side. So as a result of the accident, Bobby suffered from severe chronic pain. He had trouble working. It was hard for him to get out of bed. He also had a hard time doing things around the house.
You know, when you have that type of chronic pain, it's so difficult to do things. And it also makes you extremely depressed.
And there was some talk about the fact that he may have been depressed. But you take all of that, it's going to put a tremendous strain on any marriage.
Sure, because everything has changed now, right? What you used to do, you can't do anymore. You're frustrated. You get angry at people in your life.
Well, and your spouse is going to be frustrated because that person is having to do everything now around the house.
And it probably puts a financial strain on the relationship as well.
Sure. Investigators met with Sherrilyn's mental health provider and learned that she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and she struggled with her mental illness. Whenever she felt better, she stopped taking her medication.
Man, I've heard this a lot.
Yeah, I have too.
And I've known people that have done this, right? I don't need the meds anymore because I feel good.
I've actually seen it.
Yeah.
You know, there was a gentleman that I used to work with at a job before you and I even knew each other. This was many, many years ago. And he had bipolar disorder and he was very open about it.
Right.
You could tell on a day in, day out basis when he was taking his medicine and when he was not. And sometimes I would say something to him and he would say, yeah, I forgot to take my medicine. But he didn't say like what you said. He didn't say he was not taking it on purpose because he felt better. But I do know that there are people that do that.
Absolutely.
According to the Daily Mail, Starlet Jamison said Sherrilyn was like two different people when she was taking medication versus not. So this could explain some of the writings in her journal, the hostile letter to Bobby. Starlet said Sherrilyn was angry and hateful when she was off her medication, and she was jealous of the relationship between Bobby and Madyson.
There's some parents that get jealous of their spouse and their child's relationship. They kind of think that that relationship should be more with them versus their spouse.
Why don't they like me as much as they like
the
spouse? Yeah, I can see that dynamic. In April 2009, Sherrilyn banned Starlet from talking to Bobby on the phone. Starlet tried to get Bobby and Madyson to move in with her, but she didn't want to split the family up.
I wonder how that works when your wife says, you're banned from talking to your mom on the phone.
Again, this is a very tough dynamic. I think, that was going on in the months and years leading up to the family's disappearance. There's a lot of things going on.
You can't see it going well.
No, it's not going to go well.
No, it's like your wife telling your mom, you can't call Mike anymore. You're going to be getting a phone call from your mom saying, hey, what's going on over there?
Why are you not calling me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I already get that. My mom already calls and says, why haven't you called me? Sherrilyn was also depressed because her sister Marla died in 2007 after a bee stung her tongue, which caused her throat to swell. Now, I know some people are extremely allergic to bee stings.
Yeah.
But man, what a brutal way to go.
It would be a rough way to go.
Sherrilyn was still grieving her sister even years later. According to friends, writing was Sherrilyn's therapy. She wrote down anything that came to mind. And maybe this is why some of her writings to some seem disturbed. Sherrilyn was described by her son Colton to be moody and depressed just weeks before she went missing. But investigators do not believe that Sherrilyn's bipolar disorder played a role in the disappearance, but that her illness and Bobby's pain did play a role in their problems. And I can see that, Gibbs. I mean, they had issues. They had issues that were putting, I would think, a tremendous strain on their marriage.
Well, it had to be a tough go during that time.
I mean, people said that they loved each other. They loved Madyson. They wanted to make things work. And I think this is why they wanted to move.
Get that fresh start.
Yeah, they wanted a fresh start. They thought that's what they needed for their marriage. So I think to most people, the whole murder-suicide is considered an unlikely explanation for their deaths. The next theory is that the Jamisons' death was a drug deal gone wrong. On October 23rd, 2009, law enforcement learned that the Jamisons had working security cameras outside their home. Security camera footage from outside the home on October 8th shows them making several trips back and forth to their car in a trance-like manner. And it was said, Gibbs, that each one of them went back and forth about 20 times. They didn't acknowledge each other. They just kept walking back and forth.
So strange.
Yeah. During these trips, it was said Bobby and Sherrilyn stopped and stared off into space. So I think that's led some to believe that possibly they were under the influence of drugs. Psychologists who have looked at the footage thought it is possible that they were on drugs.
Well, anybody can say it was possible.
Well, sure. Well, and I think when you add on top of that investigators can't explain the $32,000 found inside the truck. Sherrilyn's mother has said she doesn't know where the money came from. According to Connie Kokatan, Bobby and Sherrilyn were both unemployed, and they received disability checks at the time that they disappeared. So, okay, $32,000 is a lot of money, cash.
Yeah. So how did they get that money?
Yeah, Connie was unaware of any settlement related to Bobby's car accident. They shouldn't have had that much disposable income, is I think what a lot of people have thought. But if they were involved in selling drugs, let's say, that could explain why they had thousands of dollars in cash with them.
Yeah.
Bobby and Sherrilyn had also lost a significant amount of weight in the time period before they disappeared. I think to some that kind of further supports the theory that they were using drugs, possibly selling drugs. But Connie told the Daily Oklahoman that neither one of them used drugs. She said, I never saw anything like that. Sherrilyn was depressed. She was looking for ways to fight through that, but I never saw any evidence they were using drugs. And Connie lived with the Jamisons before they died, so she believes she would have seen some evidence of drug use in the home if they had been doing that. Friends and family say that this theory makes the Jamisons seem like drug addicts who were up to no good, and that's not fair. And I get that. You know, this is a theory that a lot of people have put forth online. I think as a family member, Gibbs, you would come out against that.
Of course.
Because, number one, it makes your family members look like bad people.
Yeah.
You don't want that. And, okay, where's the evidence? If there's no evidence of it, then you're going to come out and you're going to fight it. You're going to say, that's not right. That's not fair. Investigators searched the home. They didn't find any traces of drugs or drug paraphernalia. There wasn't any in the truck, but it doesn't stop this theory from, persisting online.
Sure, anybody can speculate.
In the months following the disappearance, former Sheriff Beauchamp said the investigation led him to believe the couple were scammers. They were receiving disability checks and also had sued 3 people in Oklahoma County over a 2005 car accident. In his words, the Jamisons were dealing with numerous issues before their disappearance.
I think you got to be careful calling them scammers, right? I mean, it sounded like they had a legit cause to take disability.
Well, and there's no doubt he was in a car accident. So I'm kind of surprised that this guy would come out and use those words. Maybe there's more evidence of it than what he has disclosed. But from what I've seen and read, I'm not seeing evidence of them scamming.
I guess he must know something that we don't. So whatever that is what he's basing his theory on.
Well, he also said they were dealing with numerous issues. Okay. Right. Maybe there's something within the numerous issues part that he's not willing to say. I don't know. They were dealing with a lot of issues, but which of those issues would lead to calling them scammers? That part I don't know. Now, Connie Kokatan has said that she believes a religious cult is responsible for the family's disappearance. She told the Daily Oklahoman, just like I've said from the very beginning, and I think somebody killed them. There's just no way Bobby and Sherrilyn would ever let anything happen to Madyson unless something had been done to them. That part of Oklahoma is known for that. Cults and stuff like that. I was told that around the time of Sherrilyn's disappearance, she was on a cult's hit list. Okay, now we're going in a very different direction.
Yeah.
I completely understand the something bad happened to them angle. I get that part. And we've listed out the reasons why, right? The dog, the purse, the money. It was said that Sherrilyn was a very spiritual woman. She had some unique beliefs. One of her friends said they conducted seances together, but the friend also said that Sherrilyn was much more serious about it than her.
They even said that they thought the Jamison's house was haunted because they had experienced some really odd things in the home.
But I didn't see any detail about what those odd things were. Sherrilyn's best friend, Nikki Chenault, told Disappeared that she and Sherrilyn were interested in being witches. They purchased matching witches' Bibles as a joke. She told the Daily Mail, in all seriousness, that house was haunted. I don't want to sound crazy, but I felt a horrible presence whenever I went there. I would leave feeling so down and depressed. Once I was in the living room and this sort of gray mist descended down the stairs. It really scared me. Nikki also said that Sherrilyn told me on a couple of occasions. Bobby, who was such a gentleman, would suddenly come at her and his eyes would be completely dead and black like he was possessed. Sherrilyn wrote notes around the house like, "Get out, Satan," as a way for her to cope with the things she experienced in the house. Connie Kokatan confirmed that Sherrilyn thought her house was haunted. When she went missing, she was trying to find out if it was buried on a Native American burial ground. Okay, we are going off into some strange areas here. This is like Amityville horror, The Haunting type of stuff.
Yeah, poltergeist.
Poltergeist.
A lot of rabbit holes.
Now, I will say, I know quite a few people who either believe their house is haunted or that they have been to a house that was haunted. I've never personally experienced anything like that, things moving around by themselves, but I have a couple of family members who have.
Yeah.
So, I'm not ruling it out. I'm just saying I've never experienced it.
And you're okay with that?
And I'm okay with that. I don't want to experience it. But as it relates to the disappearance of this family, I'm wondering, Gibbs, where does it fall in? How does it work? Or how does it correlate to this family disappearing?
Right.
That part I'm not seeing.
It's interesting.
Sure.
But I don't know how it plays into how they're...
And that's why we're talking about it, right? It's an interesting part of the story. It's out there. It comes up. So we've talked about a number of theories. A final theory is that the Jamisons were randomly murdered in the mountains. And this is definitely a possibility. It is possible, Gibbs, that they stumbled upon some type of illegal activity and they were killed to prevent them from going to the police. It's also possible that they just met up with a really bad person. Now, it's a very rural area, but it's still possible. I think a lot of people doubt this theory because of the large amount of cash left in the truck.
Yeah, you would think if somebody did this, why wouldn't they search the truck, go through the wallet, go through the purse, check the truck out, and maybe they would have found this $32,000, and why would they have left it behind?
I think there are family members, there are investigators that believe that as the Jamisons left, someone came up the road and stopped them. Something ensued that led to their deaths. I think the problem is there were no signs of a struggle. We mentioned it, right? No signs of foul play. There was no blood, no broken glass, disturbances on the ground. But what does that mean, right? The Jamisons could have been forced out of the truck at gunpoint. So if it happened that way, there wouldn't be really signs of a struggle.
Right.
What are you going to struggle against? A gun? No, you're going to comply and walk the way that a person tells you to walk.
And how bad did it have to be for whoever did this to kill a little girl?
Well, and again, that's why there are so many different theories, right, surrounding this case. Because with each theory, I think there's a hole that you can poke in it. If they did meet up with a bad individual, did this person lead them, roughly 3 miles away from the truck and kill them there? Like you said, why didn't they go through the truck to see possibly what was in there? Maybe there was something of value.
Right.
Friends who have seen pictures of the crime scene say that it looks as though the Jamisons rushed out. Some also think someone besides Bobby or Sherrilyn took the picture of Madyson based on the position of her arms, how she looks away from the camera, and what they believe is kind of a fake smile. Some think Madyson looks very uncomfortable in the picture. Now, it was said that she normally liked having her photo taken, and that's, I think, part of the reason why some of the family members think that the photo looks a little strange. Former Sheriff Beauchamp told the Daily Oklahoman, normally you can go through an investigation and one by one start to eliminate certain scenarios. We haven't been able to do that in this case. With this family, everything seems possible. Okay, I haven't liked everything that he has said, but I do get what he's saying here. I think as investigators, you would like to try to eliminate certain scenarios.
Absolutely.
But from everything we've talked about, everything seems possible, even though you can definitely poke holes in every theory.
Yeah, because you just can't say absolutely not, could not happen.
Right. I think it is hard to say that. The sheriff saw surveillance footage that showed Sherrilyn putting a brown briefcase in her vehicle. This briefcase and Sherrilyn's handgun have never been found. He believes the briefcase contained a large amount of cash. He told the Daily Oklahoman, "I've gone back and forth on this thing, but my latest theory, based on how the truck was parked and what was found in the truck, I think they were forced to stop and got out of the truck to meet with someone they recognized. And I think they either left willingly or by force."
So I have to wonder, if they found $32,000 in the truck, how much money was in the briefcase, if that's what they believe?
I don't know. It could be a large amount. And I think you would have even more questions. We already have questions about, where did the $32,000 come from? Okay, if you have a much bigger amount, where did that come from?
Exactly.
A family friend was questioned because he lived with the Jamisons in the months before they vanished. Sheriff Beauchamp told the Daily Oklahoman he had the barrel stuck in his ear by Sherrilyn. Okay, that's usually not a good sign. And I think it leads people to think, okay, here's a guy maybe who had a motive.
Yeah, he's got an axe to grind.
Because outside of Bobby's father, we really haven't talked about many people who you would think, okay, here's a real motive. But the FBI cleared him. This man moved in to help with housework. Bobby wanted him around to ease the burden on himself and Sherrilyn. But he began to make Sherrilyn feel uncomfortable when Bobby wasn't around. Apparently, Madyson was afraid of this guy as well. One day when Bobby left the house, the man sat down close to Sherrilyn, got in her face, and said some very racist things. He said, I'm a white supremacist, and you keep talking about all this Indian blood you have. And I think anyone who's not pure white needs to die. Okay, that's brutal, nasty. Sherrilyn took Madyson out of the room, got one of Bobby's guns, and pointed the gun at him. She told him, "Get off this property and don't come back." They also reported that she fired shots near his feet. So obviously she wasn't messing around. Afterward, she cried and she felt guilty because she had never pointed a gun at anyone before. And I think the way that they ended up talking to this guy was they found his name on a prescription bottle in the truck. He had a lengthy criminal record. U.S. Marshals found him in Wilburton, Oklahoma. They arrested him. The FBI interviewed him, but he had a verifiable alibi.
So not the greatest guy, but doesn't sound like he had anything to do with it.
And we've mentioned the show Disappeared a couple of times in this episode. ID's Disappeared produced an episode on the Jamisons in 2010. Sherrilyn's best friend, Nikki, received a strange phone call after the premiere of the show. The caller was a woman who informed her that she was once part of a white supremacist group and saw a book containing a hit list. She tried to memorize the names and look them up on the internet. Many of the names, she said, were connected to missing person cases, including the Jamisons. She also described the insignia on Bobby's ring, which apparently few people knew about. According to Chenault, she had overheard some conversations with these guys. They were clearly talking about Sherrilyn, Bobby, and Madyson, that they took care of them. One of the men also talked about assaulting Madyson. So again, if this is true, okay, it is leading us in kind of a direction that we've already talked about, but at a different angle.
Yes.
Murdered by someone, but this is very specifically murdered by members of a white supremacist group. So Gibbs, as we wrap up this case, it's still a mystery. There's a lot of strange angles to it, a lot of things going on with Bobby and Sherrilyn.
Right.
Obviously, they had a lot going on in their marriage.
They did.
I don't think anybody disputes that. There's a lot of weird stuff going on with his dad before his death. And obviously you have a lot of theories, as you do in any unsolved case. I think if you look at the majority of opinions online, it's that they were murdered. I think most people discount the murder-suicide angle and they believe that they were murdered. The biggest problem in this case is that there's no cause of death.
Right.
So authorities can't even make an official conclusion about, what happened to them or how they died. So that really kind of leaves a lot of theories still plausible, I guess you'd have to say. But there's no doubt that the theories in this case range from what you'd kind of have to call somewhat outlandish to highly plausible.
Yeah.
But unless somebody comes forward and says, I was there, this is what happened, or I know this happened because of X, or, I don't know. As far as I know, there's no DNA that's going to break this case, wide open, at least none that I read about.
But you never know. I mean, like you said, when you open up the podcast today, the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders were finally solved.
They were. And that's been a long time. Now, the guy they pinned it on is the guy that most people thought did it in the first place.
Exactly.
And have thought for a very long time. They were just now able to conclusively say, yes, it was him. The DNA proves it. I just don't know what DNA they would have, because what they found were skeletal remains. I think it's highly unlikely that there would have been any DNA to find.
Yeah.
Unless there was somebody that got inside the truck. But if they got inside the truck, why wouldn't they have taken what was in the truck?
Exactly.
So I don't know. We may never know what happened to the Jamison family. Obviously, that's the frustrating part about Unsolved. But we keep hearing about these cases that, for years people have thought, well, we're never going to know.
And then
all of a sudden it comes out and, police figure it out or somebody comes forward. So like we always say, you can never say never. And this is one that I know a lot of people would like to see solved because it is such a mystery, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
But that's it for our case on the Jamison family disappearance. We got some voicemails, Gibbs. You want to check those out?
Yeah, let's check them out.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. This is Ruth. This is the first time I'm ever called a podcast or, leaving a voicemail for one of the podcasts that I listen to. But I just wanted to say that I enjoy your podcast so much. I love both of you guys. I think you guys are both very funny and very relatable. But I just want to say keep up the good work. And I also wanted to mention something that had happened in my hometown. I live in Kansas, a small town in southwest Kansas named Garden City. And about, I don't even know how many years ago, it's maybe 15, 20 years ago, a girl went missing and she was pregnant, and she was due to, appear in court, for the father, and right before that court appearance, she went missing, and, it hasn't been solved. So I don't know if you guys want to look into it, but I thought that was pretty interesting, especially the whole court appearance, thing, but, just keep up the good work and keep your own time ticking. Bye.
All right. Appreciate the kudos. And we'll definitely look at that case.
Absolutely.
We look at all the cases that people send in.
We do. Thank you.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. This is Jen from Wisconsin. I'm just calling because I just listened to your episode on the Solder children, and I have a theory, I guess you would call it. I don't think the Solder children are alive. I think it's been too long that if they were alive, somebody would have said something by now. I do think that they were killed, though, not in the fire. I think that the kidnapping theory is probably the most likely, that they were taken and killed elsewhere. I just don't think that by now their kidnappers would be probably long dead. Maybe the younger children, you would be able to convince them, I'm your dad or whatever, and they would go on. But the 14-year-old, a 14-year-old's not going to forget their parents, and they're not going to have the emotional maturity to be like, I have to protect my parents, so I'm not going to contact them. A 14-year-old's going to contact their parents if they can. So I do think that they've died. But that's just my theory. I just wanted to share that with you guys. So thanks for doing the podcast, and keep your own time ticking. Bye.
Well, we appreciate you leaving the voicemail. I will say, Gibbs, the Solder children, a lot of feedback on that one.
Yeah.
A lot of people have theories because it is, a very mysterious case as well. And, it's a fairly well-known case. So I do agree. It's been a long time.
It has been.
but that's a case that I would really love to know the full details. I can say that about every unsolved case, but you know, you just really want to know what happened.
Yeah.
Hey guys, this isn't something I would normally do, but I was listening to an episode of your podcast. I discovered through some guys that work the Slaughter family, and I live nearby Fayetteville, West Virginia, and have gone hiking there for many, many, many years and never had actually heard of this case, so I was shocked to hear about it. And just want to thank you guys for an awesome episode, highly detailed, great information. And now I'm going to check out some more episodes. So thank you guys for the hard work. You guys are awesome. Can't wait to listen to some more. Take care, you guys. Best wishes. Bye.
Wow, we love that.
Yeah, we do.
Check them all out.
Everyone, and then check them out again.
And make sure you check out True Crime All the Time, too, as well. So that is it, Gibbs, for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
How much is your time worth? Whether you're a realtor, lawyer, accountant, or even a content creator, Stamps.com gives you the chance to focus your time on what you do best. Don't waste your time mailing letters or shipping packages. Stamps is there to help. Print stamps, shipping labels, or certified mail forms in seconds. Get up to 89% off USPS, UPS, and other carriers, and schedule free package pickups all from one place. Stamps.com also makes it easy to track shipments, manage contacts, and report on how much you send and spend. Over the last 28 years, more than 4 million customers have relied on Stamps.com to make their lives easier. Don't waste time worrying about being a postage expert or standing in line to drop off letters and packages. Let Stamps.com do what they do best so you can do what you do better. Go to Stamps.com/audio to sign up for a special offer. No contract, cancel anytime. That's Stamps.com/audio.